Hello everyone. Please tell me, which city are you listening from? What time is it there? Is everything okay? Or does it feel like someone's watching you? The first time it happened, I thought I was just tired. Maybe my brain misfired a trick of the eye. One of those phantom illusions you get when you stare too long at your own reflection. But the truth is worse, much worse. It started on a rainy Thursday night. I remember because I couldn't sleep again. My insomnia had been getting worse for weeks. I'd lie in bed for hours, staring at the ceiling, my mind racing with thoughts that had no beginning or end. That night the power flickered, and I got up to check the breakers. Everything was fine. On the way back to my bedroom, I passed the hallway mirror. That's when I saw it, me sleeping. In the mirror, I was lying in bed, eyes closed, peaceful, but I was standing in front of it, wide awake. I froze, blinked, rubbed my eyes, still there, still sleeping in the reflection. I turned around, my bed was empty. My sheets still rumpled from tossing and turning, but the mirror showed something else, a version of me tucked in comfortably, even breathing. Slowly I reached toward the glass, and as my hand touched the mirror's surface, the sleeping version's eyes opened and locked onto mine. I staggered back, heart pounding. My reflection didn't move, it just stared blank, unblinking. I didn't sleep at all. That night, over the next few days, I avoided the mirror, covered it with an old bedsheet. But that only seemed to make it worse. I started hearing noises at night, the sound of blankets rustling as if someone was moving in bed. But when I checked, the bed was empty, and then the dreams began in them. I was always watching myself sleep from above, from beside the bed, from inside the mirror. Sometimes I could feel myself lying down and standing up at the same time. One night, I woke up gasping, convinced someone had whispered in my ear, "Let me take a turn eventually." I worked up the courage to remove the sheet from the mirror. It was worse now, much worse. The mirror no longer reflected my room properly. The lighting was off to dim, my posters weren't there. My desk was replaced by a rocking chair, but most disturbing of all, the version of me in the mirror was always there. Sleeping no matter the time of day, no matter what I was doing, even when I brushed my teeth, ate dinner paste. The hallway, the reflection showed me in bed, motionless, and if I stared long enough, it would start to shift. The sleeping me would twitch, then smile faintly. One time it waved. I started recording everything, set up a webcam, pointed at the mirror. Motion sensors even marked the mirror with a red marker, a line across the glass to detect if anything moved. Nothing helped. The footage glitched every night between 2:47 and 3:03 a.m. every night, without fail. When I finally caught a still frame, I nearly screamed. It showed the me in the mirror sitting up in bed, head turned to stare directly into the camera. And in the next frame, he wasn't there at all, just an empty bed. Then I started waking up with marks, scratches on my neck, a bruise on my rib cage. One morning I had dirt on my feet, but my shoes were untouched. It felt like I was sharing my life with something, or someone, something that looked like me but wasn't. I went to a psychologist. She told me it was stress, a fractured sense of self, a textbook case of derealization. She handed me pills, told me to rest that night. I took one and passed out. When I woke up, I was lying on the floor. The mirror was smashed, glass everywhere, and across the fragments I could still see him. My reflection perfectly whole, smiling from inside the mirror, like the cracks weren't even there on his side. He reached forward, and I swear to God I saw his hand press against the inside of the glass. Now every time I pass a reflective surface, windows, screens, puddles, I don't see myself anymore, not really. Sometimes I see him sleeping, sometimes I see him watching, sometimes he's gone, and when I look into the bathroom mirror tonight, I know what I'll find, not my reflection, not anymore, just a note smeared on the glass, written from the inside, your turn to sleep. I've always had a thing about mirrors. Something about their silent, reflective presence feels wrong. They're too perfect to still. Like they're waiting for something to look back that isn't you. It started when I moved into my new apartment studio. On the third floor of an old building with crooked ceilings and yellowed wallpaper, the kind of place with history soaked into the walls. The mirror was already there, tall, ornate, Victorian, bolted into the wall across from the bed. I asked the landlord if it could be removed. He just chuckled and said it's original to the building, part of the charm. I let it be. The first few nights were uneventful. I was tired, working long hours, and barely noticed it. But on the sixth night, something changed. I woke up just after 200 a.m. No reason, no sound, just a jolt of awareness. And when I looked across the room, the mirror was uncovered. That wouldn't be strange, except I had covered it myself on the second night. I'd draped a thick black sheet over it. For peace of mind, I couldn't sleep with it facing me, but now the sheet lay crumpled on the floor, neatly folded, as if someone had taken care to remove it and place it there. I got up, heart thudding, and checked the door, locked, deadbolt still engaged. Windows sealed. I stared into the mirror, and I swear I wasn't alone in the reflection. It showed the room, yes, my bed, my body, but behind me, standing just at the edge of the frame near the closet, was a figure. Still silent, wearing the black sheet. I turned. Instantly, no one there. The mirror empty again. I put the sheet back up, double pinned it this time, and sat in the corner with the lights on until morning. The next night I went to sleep on the couch, facing away from the mirror, but something woke me again. Cold air brushing my skin, the sound of slow, deliberate movement. The mirror was uncovered again. And the reflection, it wasn't matching reality in real life. I was sitting upright on the couch, but the mirror showed me still lying in bed, eyes closed, breathing slowly. As I watched, the reflected version of me smiled, and then opened its eyes. I couldn't move, couldn't scream. The reflection turned its head, stared directly at me, real neon, then whispered, "Don't look away now, you'll miss what comes next." I threw a blanket over the mirror, nailed it down, sealed the edges with duct tape, but by the time I got home the next day after work, the mirror was uncovered again. This time the blanket was gone entirely. I searched the entire apartment. Every drawer, every cabinet, nowhere to be found. Instead, inside the mirror's reflection on my bed was the blanket laid flat, and underneath it, a body-shaped form. I called my friend Hannah, told her everything. She came over that night with sage, a prayer book, and determination. We tried everything, cleansing prayers, shouting into the mirror, demanding answers. Nothing worked. But when she stood directly in front of it, something did happen. The mirror didn't show her reflection, it showed me standing behind her, except I wasn't. I was beside her watching. Then the reflection moved, smiled at me, and gently placed a hand on her shoulder in the glass. Hannah screamed before I could even explain. We tried to cover it again, this time bolting plywood over it. The next morning the wall was bare, the mirror was gone, only it wasn't, because that night I saw it again in my hallway. Then in my bathroom, then in my dreams, always uncovered, always watching, and always showing me something that shouldn't exist. Sometimes it shows a future I dread, sometimes a past I never lived, but lately it's been showing only one thing, my bedroom. My bed, Misley Pay, and something slowly crawling out of the mirror's surface. I moved last week, different city, new apartment, but last night I woke up and found something strange. A familiar mirror, leaning against the bedroom wall. No idea how it got there, and this time there's no blanket. No pins, nothing between me and whatever waits inside. I haven't covered it, not because I don't want to, but because it's made that clear now. It'll uncover itself always, and every time I blink, it's a little closer. I've always had a strange relationship with mirrors. Even as a child, I used to stare into them too long. My mom would joke, "You're going to summon something if you keep doing that," and I'd laugh, the kind of hollow laugh kids give when they don't quite understand but sense something wrong underneath. It wasn't until I moved into the new apartment that things started happening. The place was old, but well kept. High ceilings, hardwood floors, and in the master bedroom an antique full-length mirror bolted to the wall. The landlord had said it was original to the building, couldn't be moved. I didn't care, it added a vintage charm. I even liked how the glass was a little warped around the edges. It made the room feel older, realer. For the first week it was just a mirror, until one night, I got out of bed around 2:00 a.m. to use the bathroom. The light was dim, just the soft yellow glow of the hallway bowl. I walked past the mirror, without really looking, until I caught something in the corner of my eye. I stopped, turned slowly in the mirror. I was still lying in bed. But I wasn't. I was standing awake, right in front of it. I blinked, so did the reflection, just 2 seconds late. I stared harder, trying to convince myself I was just tired. I raised my hand, the reflection did too, but delayed again, a full beat too slow, like it was trying to remember the motion before copying it. My chest tightened, I backed away, and the reflection smiled. I wasn't smiling. I flicked on every light in the apartment. That night slept on the couch, facing away from the hallway. By morning, the mirror looked normal. The reflection matched perfectly. No delay. No smile. I almost laughed at myself, almost. But then it happened again. Every night, around the same time, the reflection would lag, subtle at first, half a second, then a full second. Then 2, until one night, it didn't move at all. I stood in front of it, breathing heavily, eyes wide. The version of me in the mirror just stared back, frozen like a painting of myself that no longer remembered how to be me. Then slowly, so slowly, the mirror version of me tilted its head. The real me didn't move. That was the night I covered the mirror. I grabbed an old blanket, duct taped it to the frame, sealed it as best I could. Then I left, drove to a friend's house, and crashed there for 2 nights. When I returned, the blanket was on the floor, the tape still intact, was cleanly peeled off. No tears. No struggle. The mirror was uncovered, waiting. From then on, I started seeing things, shadows moving behind me in the reflection, but not in real life. Flashes of faces, mine, but older. Decaying. Sometimes the reflection would mouth words I couldn't hear. Sometimes it wouldn't reflect me at all. Once I tried filming it. I set up my phone, hit record, then left the room for an hour. When I checked the footage, I saw my bedroom normal. Until the 42-minute mark. That's when a figure stepped into frame. Me, except I had never re-entered the room. Not once. The figure in the reflection stood perfectly still for 7 minutes. Then looked straight into the lens and smiled. I deleted the video, but the worst was still coming. Last Tuesday, I came home late from work. I passed the mirror on my way to the kitchen and saw something that made me freeze in place. In the reflection, the apartment was empty completely. No furniture, no lights, no me. Just a blank room with that damn mirror on the wall. And then from the corner of the reflection, something stepped in. It was me, but not me. This version of me was pale lips, cracked eyes off. Like the whites were too wide, the irises too small, it walked slowly to the center of the room, stopped in front of the mirror and pressed its hand to the glass from the inside, and then it mouthed something. I couldn't hear it, but I knew what it said. Let me out. I stumbled back, heart racing, but the mirror just showed me again. Normal, standing alone, my reflection, mimicking me perfectly like it had never happened. I called it priest. He told me mirrors are often referred to as portals, that if something ever gets through, it never wants to go back. That night I didn't sleep. And at 2:03 a.m., the mirror uncovered itself again. I hadn't even noticed I'd recovered it earlier in the day. The blanket was gone. It lay folded neatly on the floor. Now the reflection no longer lags, it leads. When I raise my hand, it moves first. When I speak, I see my mouth match afterward, and worst of all, it's smiling all the time now, even when I'm terrified, especially then. I've sealed the room, tried blacking it out, even considered smashing the mirror with a hammer. But every time I get close to it, I freeze. My body won't let me, like it's not entirely mine anymore. Last night I woke up standing in front of it, staring, eyes open, face blank, but the reflection, it waved and whispered something. I couldn't hear until I mouthed it back. It began with something so small I almost ignored it, the bathroom mirror. Just a simple rectangular mirror above the sink, frosted at the corners from age, a small crack running down the left side. It came with the apartment. I never paid it much attention. Until it started paying attention to me. The first strange moment happened around midnight. I had just finished brushing my teeth and leaned closer to check a small cut on my lip. For a split second, barely noticeable, my reflection didn't move in sync. I turned my head, left the reflection, hesitated just for a beat, then followed. I blinked a moment late. I stood still, and then it smelled a slow, unnatural curl before I could even react. I stepped back, heart thudding. But when I looked again, everything was normal. The same tired face, the same shadows under my eyes. Sleep deprived, I told myself, but things escalated fast. The next night I was getting ready for bed. I walked past the bathroom and did a double take. The light was off, the door was half open, but in the darkness of the mirror, I saw myself sleeping, not standing, lying down on my bed, asleep. The bed frame, my nightstand, even the quilt with the torn corner, it was all there in the mirror, but I was still standing awake. I stared for what felt like hours, frozen, watching my mirrored self rise and fall with invisible breath. Then it opened its eyes and turned its head toward me. I slammed the door shut and backed away. My whole body was shaking. This wasn't a trick of light. This wasn't imagination. That mirror was showing something else, another version of me, or something pretending. The next morning, I covered the mirror with a blanket. I taped it down, even pushed a chair against it. By afternoon, the blanket had fallen, or rather being peeled back. The tape was still attached, torn as if by fingers. The chair had been quietly moved aside from the hallway. I could see the top half of my reflection. It was smiling again. I didn't go near it for days. I used my phone camera to brush my teeth. I shaved blind. The mirror stayed covered with whatever I had, towels, cardboard, duct tape. But each morning, I'd find the mirror uncovered. No matter what I did, and worse, the reflection no longer copied my movements exactly. It would stand still while I moved, blink when I didn't at times. I'd catch it watching me, even when I wasn't looking into it directly. Then came the whispers. They started just outside the bathroom door, barely audible at first, like the hissing of water through old pipes. But the closer I leaned in, the more I could make out actual words. Let me finish your sleep, you're tired. Let me wear your skin, you stare too long. Now I get to blink. That night, I dreamed I was trapped inside the mirror. I screamed and clawed at the glass. as my reflection stood in my room, living my life, smiling with my face. I woke up in a sweat and the mirror was completely shattered on the floor. Relief, that's what I felt finally. It was gone, but that night something else happened. I went to the kitchen to drink water. As I passed the hallway, I caught a glimpse in the small decorative mirror on the wall. My reflection wasn't there instead. I saw a figure standing still, smiling, wearing my clothes, with eyes that weren't mine. Every mirror in the apartment started acting the same: bathroom, bedroom. Even my phone screen's reflection had a split-second delay, like it needed to process how to copy me now. I taped them all, covered them, broke some, but the thing, whatever it is, doesn't need glass anymore. It knows me. It watches from any surface, with a glint: my TV, my kettle, my windows after rain last night. I woke up to the creaking of my bedroom door. I opened my eyes and saw myself standing over the bed. Not a dream, not sleep paralysis. Me, but not me. It leaned down slowly. Its eyes were completely hollow, and it whispered, "Go back inside. It's my turn now. If you're reading this, don't stare too long into your mirror tonight. If your reflection ever hesitates, if it ever smiles when you don't cover the mirror, turn away, because once it finishes learning you, it takes your place. And you'll be trapped behind glass forever." It started 2 weeks after I moved into the new apartment. Nothing fancy, just a second-floor studio, cracked tiles in the kitchen, and that strange humming noise from the pipes that came and went. But it was cheap and quiet, too quiet, in fact. The mirror came with the apartment, a tall one mounted to the wall near the bathroom door, thin silver frame, slightly tilted forward. Nothing unusual, at least not at first. I only noticed it because, I'm a creature of habit. Every morning I brush my teeth for exactly 2 minutes. I don't check the clock. I look in the mirror, and that's when I saw it one morning. Just as I was brushing, I stopped mid-motion. Something felt off. I froze, toothbrush hovering, and in the mirror, I moved just slightly, a twitch of the head, a blink, half a second too late. I blinked hard, shook my head, probably sleep deprived, but the next day it happened again. I froze. My reflection didn't blink. It blinked slow, then caught up to me like a skipped frame on a video. The third day I tested it. I stood still in front of the mirror for a full minute. I didn't move a muscle, neither did my reflection. Until it did. It turned its head just a little, like it was trying to get a better look at me. Then it snapped back into place. I stumbled back. Heart pounding, told myself it was just a trick of the eye. The mirror was tilted weird. I was tired. There had to be an explanation, so I recorded it. Set up my phone and stood still again. When I watched the video afterward, my blood ran cold on camera. I was motionless, but in the mirror at the 48-second mark, my reflection smiled. And I didn't. I covered the mirror with a sheet, taped the edges. I couldn't bear to look at it. But the next morning the sheet was on the floor, the tape peeled off the mirror. There again. I moved the bed to the opposite wall, tried to forget about it, but that night I had the worst dream of my life. I was trapped inside the mirror, watching myself sleep, and just before I woke, my reflection leaned close to the glass and whispered, "You're in my spot." After that I slept facing away from the mirror every night, but some mornings I woke up, turned toward it, or worse, standing in front of it, like sleepwalking but deliberate. One night I woke up and saw something move in the mirror. I was lying perfectly still, but my reflection was slowly raising its hand. Then it pressed its palm against the glass, and a smudge appeared. Real on my side. I screamed, turned on all the lights, cleaned the glass. No use. Every time I wiped it, the handprint returned until I gave up and smashed it. But when I returned the next morning from work, the mirror was whole again. Not just replaced, repaired, same tilt, same frame, same smudge. That's when I called someone, a local mirror restoration expert came over. I didn't tell him the full story, just that it was acting strange. He examined it quietly for a while, then said, "This isn't a standard mirror. It's antique, possibly Venetian, but there's something else." He pointed to the back where faint lettering had been carved into the wood, old Latin. He couldn't read it fully, but he recognized two words: speculum, ostium. The mirror of the other. I asked what it meant. He just looked at me and said, "Don't cover it again." That's when they get angry. That night, I stayed up watching the mirror, not sleeping. At exactly 3:11 a.m., my reflection stepped forward. Not just a twitch stepped forward, its body pushed against the glass like it was made of water. Its smile was wide now, not human, and in its hand was a toothbrush. It raised it slowly to its mouth and began brushing exactly how I do, exactly how I did, except for one difference. It never broke eye contact. I haven't slept since I've taped a camera to it, and I watch it from my phone. All night sometimes, I catch it staring at the lens waiting. Today I turned my back for just a second. A noise distracted me when I looked again. The mirror was empty, no reflection, just my room, but slightly wrong, and then just as I leaned forward, a hand slapped against the glass from the inside. It left a crack. Now there are two of them, and they both look like me. But only one of us is breathing. If you ever move into a place with a tilted mirror, don't test it, don't record it, and whatever you do, don't blink. I live alone, one bedroom apartment on the 6th floor. Simple, quiet, predictable. Which is why when I woke up one morning to find my bathroom mirror fogged up with words, I knew something was horribly wrong. I hadn't taken a shower, the heater wasn't on. There was no steam, just condensation in the shape of letters. "You slept too long." I stared at it for a good minute. My first instinct was to wipe it away, but my hand trembled when it got close. The fog shifted beneath my fingers like it was breathing. I backed away. Maybe it was a prank, maybe I'd left the bathroom fan off and somehow the heater steamed the place up. Maybe someone hacked my smart thermostat, but I checked everything. No heat had run that night, no water had been used, no signs of a break-in. I chalked it up to exhaustion, stress, too much screen time, until it happened again the next night. I locked the bathroom door before bed. I even placed a hair across the door frame, a trick I'd learned from a friend in the army. The hair falls. Someone entered. I woke up, groggy, headache pounding. When I stumbled to the bathroom, the door was still shut. The hair was in place, but the mirror, it was fogged. New words. "This time you were dreaming of me." I didn't sleep at all that night. I stayed in the living room, watching the bathroom door like a hawk. At 3:47 a.m., I heard the soft clink of the faucet turning, then silence. I crept toward the door. It was still closed, still locked. When I opened it, the mirror had just finished fogging. Again, this time it said, "Thank you for letting me out." I ran. I didn't even lock the door behind me. I drove to my sister's place across town and stayed 2 nights. The first night, I slept like a baby. No dreams, no fog, nothing. But on the second morning, the bathroom mirror at her place was fogged. The words, "You can't leave a mirror unwatched." I demanded she let me cover it with a sheet. She laughed at first, but let me do it. I spent the rest of the day researching haunted mirrors, mirror entities. Folklore. Most sources agreed on one thing: don't let it mimic you. Don't let it watch you. And never sleep in front of an uncovered mirror. I returned to my apartment, with every mirror covered. Bed sheets, black tape, even cardboard. The place looked like a horror movie set, but I felt safer for a while. Then I started hearing sounds from behind the coverings, scraping, a soft hum, like someone breathing too close to glass. I set up my phone to record overnight, watched the footage the next morning at 2:39 a.m. The sheet on the bathroom mirror rose, as if being pulled from inside. No one in the video, no breeze. It just lifted and dropped to the floor. Then the fog appeared slowly, as if drawn by an invisible finger. Covering me is rude. I smashed the mirror that night, glass everywhere. I swept every shard, dumped it in the trash outside. Felt relief for the first time in days, but when I returned to the bathroom, the mirror was whole, not repaired. Reset, perfect, untouched, and in the center, fogged neatly, was one last message: break me again, and you'll wake up inside. I don't sleep much anymore. Every time I blink too long in front of a mirror, I see something flicker, a delay in my reflection, a smile that lasts a second too long. I don't know if it wants out or if it wants me in. Either way, I keep the lights on now, and I never ever look too closely, because last night, just before I turned away, my reflection whispered something my ears couldn't hear. It. My soul understood. It's almost ready. It started with the smallest thing, a smile that wasn't mine. I was brushing my teeth in the bathroom mirror, tired, distracted, when I caught it. A flicker. My reflection smiled just a second before I did not, after not with me before I stopped brushing. Leaned in, nothing looked out of place. Same sleepy eyes, same unshaven chin, same old faded t-shirt, but something felt off. The air felt colder on my skin than it should been. Behind my eyes, the ones in the mirror, there was something that didn't feel like me at all. I chalked it up to exhaustion, moved on. I wish I hadn't. The next night, I dreamed of the mirror again. Except this time I wasn't in it. The mirror showed my bedroom, same sheets, same lamp, but no me. I stood in the dream watching it, and after a few seconds, someone else stepped into view. Same height, same build, but the eyes were wrong. They didn't blink, they didn't move. They stared at me, though I wasn't in the reflection at all, and then it raised its hand and wrote something on the inside of the mirror. "I'm already here." I woke with my heart in my throat. And the strangest thing, my mirror was fogged over, like I had just taken a hot shower, except I hadn't even used the bathroom yet, and in the mist, just faintly visible, was a smudged fingerprint, like someone had traced circles in the steam. I covered the mirror that night, couldn't bear to look at it. Hung an old blanket over it, duct taped the corners. It felt childish, like something a kid would do, but I felt watched whenever I was near it. By morning, the blanket was on the floor, the duct tape was still on the mirror's corners, just hanging loose, as if the mirror had pushed it off from the inside. I didn't sleep in my room. After that I moved to the guest bedroom, smaller, no mirror. For a few nights things were fine, but then one morning, I woke up and saw a thin crack running diagonally across my bathroom mirror. Again, not the guest one, my original room. Except I hadn't been in there for days. And each day, after the crack deepened, tiny branching lines spread across the surface. It looked like something was trying to crawl out. And that's when the dreams started again. This time I was watching myself sleep from inside the mirror. I could see my back, my breathing. I even watched myself shift and mutter in my sleep, but I wasn't dreaming this time. I was awake. My eyes were open. I could see my room, but also somehow I was seeing myself from another angle. The reflection showed me sleeping, but I wasn't. I looked up at the mirror slowly, and I swear to God, I saw my eyes shut in the reflection. I brought in a friend the next day. Told him I thought the mirror was rigged, or maybe there was a gas leak making me hallucinate. He checked everything, nothing weird, but when I asked him to stand in front of the mirror just to test it, he hesitated. Then said sure, and the second he stood in front of it, his reflection didn't move for 3 whole seconds. He turned to me and said, "Did It just lagged then. The reflection smiled wide. Wrong to many teeth, we both backed away. He left immediately, told me I needed a vacation. I tried covering the mirror again, this time with a thick black tarp nailed into the wall that seemed to work. For a day, then the dreams came again, and this time when I woke up, the tarp was gone. I found it outside in the backyard soaking wet, no explanation. And the mirror no longer cracked, perfectly smooth, perfectly clear, except it was fogged again. This time, the writing said, "I dream when you don't." The final straw came 3 nights ago. I woke up hearing a scraping sound, slow rhythmic metal on glass. I turned on the lamp, and there etched into the mirror itself were tally marks 1, 2, 3, 4. 56 in total, and standing inside the reflection was me, but not just me. This version had no pupils, just white eyes. It tilted its head as I moved closer, then it mouthed, "Let me in." I screamed and punched the mirror glass, exploded my knuckles. Split open, but when I looked again, the mirror was untouched. My hand was bleeding, but the reflection wasn't. I've tried everything, now replaced the mirror, it came back. Removed it, a new one appears. I can't sleep because every time I dream the mirror cracks more soon, it will shatter, and I don't know what happens when it breaks from the inside, but I saw something behind the cracks last night. Not a face, not a person, a room. It looked exactly like mine, but darker, dustier, and filled with mirrors. All around the walls, each one showing a version of me sleeping, and in the center, standing in perfect stillness, was the thing that smiles before. I do it looked up through every mirror, and said in hundreds of voices, "We almost through." I found the mirror at an estate sale. It wasn't the kind of thing I normally buy. Ornate frame, Baroque carvings, cracked at one corner, but something about it felt magnetic, like it was calling to me, whispering beneath the rustle of people browsing. $50. The seller said. Antique? I asked. She hesitated. Old enough. I took it home and hung it in my bedroom. It looked strange against the plain white wall, like it didn't belong, but I liked the way it made the room feel larger. That first night it just sat there, catching the moonlight normal, but on the second night, I noticed something strange. I was brushing my hair in front of the mirror when I saw it, a red coffee mug on the dresser behind me. Except there was no mug. I turned, blinked, the dresser was empty. I looked back at the mirror. Still there, a small red ceramic mug with a chipped handle. I laughed it off. Figured it was a trick of the light, maybe a reflection from something outside. I forgot about it until the next morning at 9:14 a.m. I got a package from a courier inside a red mug, chipped at the handle. A free gift from some tea company I'd never heard of. That was the first time. After that, I started watching the mirror more closely every night before bed. I'd sit in front of it, and just look. On the third night, I saw myself picking up my phone now. I hadn't moved. The screen flashed a number I didn't recognize. The next day at that exact time, my phone rang. Unknown number. When I answered, no one spoke, just breathing. Then a whisper, "We're getting closer." I hung up. That's when I started keeping a journal, documenting what the mirror showed. The next 2 weeks were filled with small predictions, a spilled drink, an incoming text, a bruise I didn't have until the next morning. But then things turned darker. One night I saw blood, not mine, in the mirror. I stood at my front door, hands trembling, red-stained. Someone was behind me in the hallway, only a silhouette. I couldn't make out the face. I blinked. The image disappeared. The next day, I stayed home paranoid. Nothing happened. I thought I'd changed fate. I was wrong that night. The mirror didn't show me It showed my bedroom completely empty, just the bed, the fan spinning. Then at 3:13 a.m., the door opened slowly. A figure entered, slender, pale eyes like hollow glass. It stood at the edge of the bed and leaned in. Then the mirror cracked, just slightly pittering out from the top left. I ran from the room, slept on the couch. When I came back the next morning, there was a faint handprint on the inside of the mirror's glass. From inside, after that, it became nightly torment. I stopped seeing reflections. Only glimpses of the future fire, a knife on the floor, an ambulance outside, my neighbor crying, my mother screaming. Me, lying motionless, eyes wide, and every time I dreamed, the crack in the mirror grew wider, like the glass was slowly tearing open. One night the mirror showed a date. Tomorrow, 3:17 a.m. I stared at it for hours. I was afraid to blink. Then the mirror whispered, "It happens at the edge of knowing." I tried to cover the mirror with a sheet. But by morning the sheet was gone, folded neatly at the foot of my bed, the mirror spotless, uncracked, like it had reset itself. But I knew it hadn't, because in the mirror's reflection my bed was empty, and behind me a shape stood just beyond the door, waiting. One morning, as I brushed my teeth, I noticed something off about the mirror in my bathroom, not the kind of thing you'd call paranormal, just a delay. A hesitation. I raised my hand to my mouth, and for the briefest moment, the reflection didn't match. It was as if my mirror self was trying to keep up. I blamed it on poor sleep. I'd been stressed. Late line, new job, moving into an old rental house, and sleepless nights filled with strange dreams. The kind where you wake up uncertain of who you are, where you are, or if you're still dreaming. The mirror hung on a wall, opposite the shower, an old antique thing with a thick frame and glass that was just slightly warped. The landlord had said it came with the house. "Don't worry about the mirror," she told me. "It's original, a lot of character." I thought she meant the house had character, not the mirror. A week in and things escalated. Every morning I began to feel like someone else was watching me through the glass, not just my reflection, but another presence just behind it. At first I thought it was just my imagination, but then I noticed little changes. My reflection would blink a second too late, or smile when I wasn't. Sometimes I would lean in close, only to see my own mirrored eyes dart sideways, watching something I couldn't see in my own world. And then one night, I caught something I wish I hadn't. I had woken up to use the bathroom. It was 3:21 a.m. The hallway light was off, so I left the bathroom door cracked, letting moonlight pour in. I finished, turned to the sink to wash my hands, then froze in the mirror. I wasn't alone. There was someone standing behind me, not a figure I could see in the real room. In the reflection, a tall, dark-shaped, shoulders hunched, head tilted slightly to one side, no facial features, no movement, just watching me. I spun around, nothing. But in the mirror it remained. I slammed the medicine cabinet shut, splashing water everywhere, and stumbled out of the bathroom. Heart racing, I didn't go back in until morning. Daylight made it feel safe again, though I avoided looking too long into the glass that day. I covered the mirror with a towel. And that night, I found the towel on the floor, folded neatly. I didn't do that. I called the landlord the next morning. Trying to sound calm, I asked if I could remove the mirror and replace it. She hesitated, then said, "Don't." "What do you mean, don't? It's part of the house." She sounded afraid. "Please just leave it, don't cover it, don't move it, just let it be." I hung up. That night I dreamed I was inside the mirror, not looking at it, not reflected, but inside, trapped. My room was backward, flipped like an old photograph. The window showed the sky, but the stars were too close to wrong. I touched the mirror's surface. and saw someone else looking in from the other side, but they didn't seem surprised. They smiled, I screamed, but no sound came out. I banged on the glass, the other me just watched, then the mirror shattered from my side. I woke up on the floor in front of the mirror, my palms were bleeding, there were faint handprints on the inside of the glass. I didn't sleep the next night. When I finally passed out on the couch at dawn, I had a new dream. This time I saw tomorrow. I watched myself go to work. I saw a car accident, a call from my sister, a voicemail I hadn't received yet, and when I woke, the day unfolded exactly like the dream. By the end of the week, I started using the mirror, deliberate like a window ID, stare into it late at night, not for my reflection but for the other one. ID whisper questions. What are you? What do you want? Why me? It never answered, but it listened, and every day I saw it more clearly. The figure behind me became more defined, more human, more familiar. Last night, it stepped forward, not just in the mirror but I heard footsteps behind me. I turned quickly. Nothing, but when I faced the glass again, the figure was gone, only I remained, and I was smiling, even though I wasn't. The smile spread impossibly wide. My eyes in the mirror were darker, older. I tried to back away, but the mirror version of me didn't move. He just waved once slowly, and whispered, I've waited so long to be real. Then the light bulb above the mirror shattered, and now I can't see my reflection anymore, but I feel him watching me from the other side of the glass, waiting for me to slip, for me to sleep so he can finally step through. They say mirrors are just glass and silver passive objects, but they've never lived with the one in my bedroom. It's an antique, tall, oval, freestanding. I inherited it from my grandmother after she passed. She used to keep it draped in black cloth. When I was a kid, I asked her why. She told me, because sometimes mirrors forget, they're just mirrors. I used to laugh at that. Now I understand. It began the first night I moved into her old house. The mirror stood at the foot of the bed, silent and regal. I removed the cloth, ran a hand along the frame. Dust flaked off like old skin. Beneath it, the glass gleamed unnaturally clear, as though time had forgotten to stain it. That night I dreamed of my roommate. Something was wrong. I stood in front of the mirror in my dream, staring at myself, but my reflection didn't match me. It stood straighter, smiled wider, and its eyes, they weren't mine. They looked older, wiser, cruel. When I woke up, the mirror was fogged over, as if someone had breathed on it. The second night, I stayed awake longer, reading, avoiding eye contact with the mirror. At 3:07 a.m., I heard a sound like fingers tapping glass. I looked up. My reflection was smiling, but I wasn't. I was frowning. I blinked rapidly, thinking it was sleep deprivation or a trick of the light, but the reflection didn't blink. It tilted its head, curious, watching. I turned the mirror to face the wall. The next morning, it was back in place, facing me. I hadn't touched it by the fourth night. I stopped sleeping. I sat up in bed, blanket around my shoulders, eyes fixed on the mirror. I thought if I just stared long enough, I'd catch the trick. Made a prank or some residual trauma from losing my grandmother. I told myself it was psychological. Then the reflection spoke. You look tired. Its lips moved, my mouth didn't. I froze, couldn't even scream. Why don't you let me rest tonight? It said. I've been awake a long time. I jumped out of bed and covered the mirror with the old cloth. I duct taped the edges, then I dragged the whole thing into the hallway. But at 3:00 a.m., I heard a dragging sound, and when I turned on the light, the mirror was back facing me, cloth on the floor, tape torn like paper. I tried to get rid of it. I took it outside to the woods behind the House left it there the next night. I heard something knock on the window. 3 soft taps. I opened the curtain. The mirror was standing outside, upright on the lawn. Facing me, no footprints in the frost, no sign of how it got there. I called a friend. Told her everything. She stayed over that night, more to humor me than out of belief. She brought sage salt, her mom's Bible. We sealed the mirror with tape, salt, and symbols, set up a camera. The next morning, the tape was gone, the salt was scattered across the floor. The symbols erased the footage at 3:07 a.m. The mirror fogged over. Then the reflection stepped out of frame. My friend left that afternoon. She hasn't returned my calls since. The reflection speaks to me nightly now. It says things it shouldn't know, things from my past, things about people I love, things I haven't told anyone. She didn't forgive you, you know that wasn't just a dream. It was a warning. I know where your father went. Want me to show you? It speaks in my voice now. Exactly my tone, my inflection, but it says things I'd never say. I tried smashing the mirror last week. The hammer bounced off. Not even a crack. I tried fire. It wouldn't burn. I tried burying it in concrete. It appeared back in my room the next morning. Not a speck of dust on it now. It's worse, it doesn't just speak, it moves, it waves when I walk by. Sometimes it's missing entire lino reflection at all, just an empty room behind the glass. Once I saw someone else in the mirror, a man I didn't recognize. He was screaming, trapped behind the surface. I think my reflection has done this before. I think it's done this to many people. Tonight it gave me a choice. You look exhausted. It said, why don't we trade just for a while? You sleep ill, live. I laughed at first, but am not laughing now, because I just looked into the mirror, and my reflection is gone. I was never superstitious. I stepped over sidewalk cracks, walked under ladders, broke mirrors before breakfast, and thought nothing of it, but that changed the day I shattered the mirror in my grandmother's attic. It was a tall, old-fashioned thing, 6 feet high, curved at the top, with an ornate brass frame that curled like vines. It had belonged to my great-grandmaster, or maybe even further back, passed down through generations like some cursed heirloom in a forgotten folktale. Gran had always warned me not to touch it. Don't play near the attic mirror shed. Say why? I asked once, laughing. Her face turned stern. Because you might see something you don't like, or something that might like you back. I thought it was just one of her old world superstitions, a story meant to keep kids away from fragile things, but the attic became my favorite place after she passed. Quiet, dusty, full of secrets, the mirror stood propped against the wall, draped in a yellowing sheet. I wasn't supposed to be up there that day, not really. My parents were downstairs talking to the lawyer, sorting through the will. I pulled the sheet off, coughing as dust exploded into the air. The glass was cloudy, streaked with agate, still intact, still reflective. I stood in front of it. At first I saw myself tired, thin, pale under the attic bulb, but then something felt off. My reflection blinked slower than I did. I raised my right hand, it raised its left, like normal. Then I lowered my hand, but the reflection didn't move. It stared at me, unblinking. Then it smiled, not a twitch of the lips, not a grin. A wide-stretched, inhuman smile that tore across the face, like someone had drawn it on with a razor. I stumbled back, my shoulder hit a shelf, a box fell, and something inside me snapped. I grabbed the closest thing, old wrenchand, hurled it straight at the mirror. The glass exploded. Shards flew in every direction, raining down like frozen knives. The attic went dead silent, and then the room felt wrong, not cold, not warm, just vacant, like something had left, or worse, something had entered. At first I thought I'd imagined it, until I noticed the reflection still there, not on the mirror, on the floor. a perfect reflection of myself staring up from the broken shards. Only, I wasn't moving, but it was its head tilted, its grin returned, and then, from one of the shards, I saw a hand reach out. Not mine, long fingers pale, stretching out of the reflection as if the glass had become a pool of water. I screamed and stumbled. Back again, falling down the stairs and hitting the landing hard. My parents found me minutes later, sobbing, blood trickling from a cut above my eye. I told them I slipped, that I was clumsy, that I broke Gran's mirror by accident. They believed me, but I knew better, because that night, as I lay in bed, I felt something watching me. I checked the room, nothing, but in the far corner where no mirror existed there was a faint shimmer in the air, like heat rising off pavement, and in it, two eyes smiling. Weeks passed, I pretended everything was normal, but reflections didn't behave the same anymore. In puddles, my double blinked twice. In windows, it didn't turn when I did. In my phone's front camera, it mouthed words I hadn't spoken. One night I covered every mirror in the house, taped towels over them, but in the morning they were uncovered, clean, polished, waiting. And on the bathroom mirror, written in fog, "Thanks for letting me out, now I don't look in mirrors." I brush my teeth with my back to the sink. I turn off my phone's selfie cam. I avoid anything that reflects, because I don't know where it is now. I don't know what it is. But I know one thing for sure: when I broke the mirror, I broke the lock, and now it's free, and I'm not the only one it's watching. The mirror wasn't anything special, an old rectangular piece with a bronze frame and faint scratches across the bottom, like someone had tried to claw at their own reflection. I found it at a thrift store, propped behind a stack of vintage picture frames. It felt heavy when I picked it up, not just in weight, but in presence, like it had been waiting. I told myself I was being silly. I bought it, cleaned it, and hung it in my bedroom just beside the closet. It looked oddly elegant there, like it belonged more in a Victorian hallway than my modest apartment. The first few nights were normal, I even forgot it was there. But on the fourth night, something changed. I was brushing my teeth in the bathroom when I noticed a chill in the air, not just cold but sharp, like icy breath pressed against my neck. When I turned, nothing was there, but when I glanced in the hallway mirror on the way to my room, I saw something strange. My bedroom light was on. I always turned it off. I went in confused and reached for the switch. The mirror beside the closet caught my eye. I paused. My reflection was there, normal, but there was something else. A shape behind me. It stood near the closet, vague and blurry, like a person made of smoke. I turned around. Quickly, nothing. I faced the mirror again. Now it was gone. I told myself it was a shadow, a trick of the light. A moment of exhaustion playing with my senses. I wish it had been that night. I woke up at 3:17 a.m. The room was dim. The only light came from the street lamp leaking through the blinds. I couldn't move at first. Not because I was paralyzed, but because I was listening. The mirror was buzzing, a low hum, like static wrapped in a heartbeat. I sat up slowly, my eyes adjusted, and I looked to the mirror. Someone was standing in it. They weren't in my room, just the reflection, a tall figure, completely black, as if someone had torn a silhouette out of the world. No face, no features, just watching me. I blinked, gone. I turned on every light, slept with the TV on. Next morning, I covered the mirror with a bedsheet. Later that day, I came home from work and found the sheet on the floor, neatly folded. The mirror was clean, polished, even as if someone had wiped away the dust with care. I didn't sleep at all that night. Every time I looked into the mirror, nothing was there until I turned away. Then I could feel it. That presence, watching, breathing. Eventually I stopped facing it directly. but the reflections kept changing. Objects in the mirror would shift. My closet door would be open in the mirror but closed in reality. Sometimes I would catch the mirror showing me smiling, even when I wasn't. Then came the pictures. I woke up one morning to find my phone gallery full of photos taken while I slept. The angles were strange, all from behind, from the edge of the bed, and in one of them, my mirror was clearly visible. Standing in the mirror just behind my sleeping self was that same dark figure, closer than ever. I tried to leave, booked a hotel, stayed away for 3 nights. When I returned, the mirror was cracked, hairline fractures split across its surface like veins. In the center of it, someone had written with a finger through the dust, "You brought me here." That night I dreamed of the mirror. Except I wasn't looking into it, I was inside it watching myself sleep. Standing right where the figure used to be, I woke up screaming. I tried smashing the mirror. I took a hammer and shattered it into 1,000 jagged pieces. I swept it into a box, taped it shut, and threw it in the dumpster. And that night my phone buzzed one new picture, a blurry, grainy image of my bedroom. Taken from the floor. In the picture, the mirror was still there, not broken, and so was the figure, but this time its head was tilted toward the camera, toward me. I don't know how it came back. I don't know if it ever left. Every mirror in my house now shows strange shadows. Some no longer reflect me at all. I've covered them all. But every morning without fail the covers are gone, and the mirrors are smiling. They're waiting for me to look again, and when I do, I know the figure will be closer.